Welcome to this video all about A-level English literature, political and social protest writing. In this video, the aim is to show you an example section C response where you're dealing with two texts. It's open book. The issue with that is not to get distracted by that, not to spend large amounts of time trying to find a quote, for example, because it can be looking like a needle for in a haystack. Um, and also to show you an essay structure and what it looks like on the page. The question that we're going to be looking at here is to do with suffering, and more specifically, the suffering that can be presented to innocent people. And for this video, I'm going to be using the Kite Runner and Blake's Songs of Innocence and Experience. So if you're studying those texts, you might find this video or even part of this video useful in terms of seeing how you would write about these texts in an essay. So very short introduction. You don't have to write a long introduction because an introduction by its very definition introduces, and while somebody is introducing, they're not really saying anything new. They're not really committing to the essay yet. So it's far better to write a short, sharp introduction than a long one, and then spend that extra time going into your texts. So in this essay, it's made up of, I think, 4 paragraphs. A couple of those paragraphs are about Blake, and a couple of those paragraphs from memory are about the Kite Runner, or it might be actually that 3 of the paragraphs are about Blake actually, and 1 paragraph is about the Kite Runner. So anyway, you'll see that in a second. There's no need to compare text together with this task, so you can simply write a very blocky essay structure, that's fine. And you can see here we've got a paragraph about the chimney sweeper, the poem The Chimney Sweeper, in which case I'm just talking about that one poem. And rather than obligating myself to talk about the whole of that poem top to bottom, which is unnecessary, I'm selecting the bits of that poem that best describe or best answer the question. So I'm using the text selectively. Okay, so the suffering imposed on innocent individuals is a key occurrence in political and social protest texts, such as the Kite Runner and William Blake's poetry, Songs of Innocence and Experience. In Blake's poem, The Chimney Sweeper from Innocence, a young child has recently been sold into the dystopian world of sweeping chimneys by his father. In Blake's capacity as a social commentator who's willing to focus on the suffering and injustices endured by all, he states that the child sleeps in soot, suggesting an inability to escape and seek freedom in the living world from this terrible existence. The speaker, along with fellow sweeper Tom Dacre, are locked up in coffins of black, metaphorically alluding to the claustrophobic and oppressive nature of chimneys, but also childhood more generally, taking away the freedom and idealism that childhood should bring. The corruption of innocence is also seen in the second stanza, when Tom's head was shaved, which is conveyed using the simile curled like a lamb's back, connoting innocence and sacrifice. The fact the hair being shaved is white suggests the children are pure and innocent and are being sacrificed for their work, which could be viewed as an oppressive prison sentence with greater risk of death than would otherwise be the case. Significantly, to escape this dystopian existence, Tom dreams of an angel who had a bright key and opened the coffins and set them all free, suggesting the apparition of the angel in the abstract world of a dream offers the only escape. As a result, the sweeps leap and laugh in a green plain and wash in a river and shine in the sun, suggesting a greater harmony with the green world as a rejuvenating and wholesome force. Nature allows them to wash their soot away and breathe clean air as remedies to their suffering, rise upon clouds and sport in the wind. The dream also enables the boys to rise in the dark and dutifully go to work for another day of sweeping chimneys and breathing in soot, which could either be viewed as a positive thing because it shows the boys have an inner resilience, which is admirable, or a negative thing because of how they only seek freedom and escape while in a dreamlike state, at odds with their living reality. So, in other words, there's a degree of hopelessness here and a sadness that life must be so awful that they can only escape through dreams. A second poem that presents the suffering of innocence is Infant Sorrow, which focuses on a newborn baby struggling to adjust to the dangerous world that it finds itself in, allowing Blake to make an indirect comment about the miserable and dystopian state of society. Children are important in political and social protest texts because they can be devices which enable writers to present the imposition of a suffering onto innocents, who have no choice but to bear the consequences of the actions of others. Here the baby's mother is groaning and its father is weeping, and a list of three, helpless, snaking, and piping loud, reinforces the child's anguish. In the second stanza, the child must accept being placed in swaddling bands, representing its entrapment and settled for being bound and wary. Another poem that presents the suffering of innocence is The Schoolboy, which is interested in depicting the failures of the education system and the impact this has on the creativity and freedom of youth. The first stanza depicts the equilibrium and sweet company the child speaker has with nature. The birds sing on every tree, suggesting a sense of jubilation and freedom associated with the green world and bucolic pastoral. However, the fronted conjunction but at the start of the second stanza depicts a change in mood, as the child must reject this freedom and harmony in favour of going to school, which drives all joy away, because the little ones spend the day in sighing and dismay. The semantic field of misery is evident throughout the poem. Words such as cruel, sighing, dismay, drooping, anxious, dreary, and fears reinforce Blake's apathy towards a rigid and prison-like form of education as mitigating freedom, metaphorically shown through the rhetorical question, how can the bird that is born for joy sit in a cage and sing? At the end of the poem, the reference to nipped buds and tender plants are stripped, suggests that Blake is likening the erosion of children's creativity and free spirit to harsh winters that can destroy young buds and in so doing impact negatively on the future harvest. In other words, the children's dogmatic education will do nothing but harm, preparing them for bleakness, suffering, and exploitation that they may face in the more dystopian world of experience, represented in this poem through the phrase blast of winter. So this is a student, of course, that has written about three poems. That's really the maximum, I think, in this task, showing a real confidence with Blake. The last thing they've got to do is write one paragraph about the other text in order to satisfy the requirements of the task, which in this case is the Kite Runner. So they're talking here about Hassan being a representative of innocence. In The Kite Runner, Hassan's unwavering loyalty and sacrificial characterization reinforces that political and social protest texts are often concerned with presenting the suffering of innocent people and children. In chapter 7, Hassan's rape becomes a pivotal moment of the text for numerous reasons. Not only does it show how sexual violence is used consistently in the novel as a form of punishment, but it also reinforces how Asef, despite being a child himself at this point, represents an authoritarian force in the novel, which later foreshadows his involvement in the Taliban. In chapter 7, he is ruling with impunity and is committed to raping Hassan for not returning the kite, as well as out of revenge for threatening Asef with a slingshot in chapter 5. Amir's flashbacks of the slaughtering of the sheep during Eid is significant because of the consistency between the sheep's eyes and Hassan's eyes having the look of acceptance, as they are both sacrificed for a greater force, the sheep for religion and Hassan for Amir. After the rape, Hassan's blood on the snow acts as a metaphor for the tarnishing of Hassan's innocence, in the same way the soot in the chimney sweeper could be seen to tarnish the children's childhood. To make matters worse, Amir frames Hassan, which culminates in Ali and Hassan leaving Baba's employment. Had this not happened, Baba, Amir, Ali, and Hassan could have escaped to America and to safety. Instead, Hassan is never seen alive again, as he is executed by the totalitarian theocracy of the Taliban, who accuse him of trespassing in Baba's mansion. The fact that Hassan was murdered for sticking up for himself and the truth not only shows his unwavering loyalty and goodness, but also shows the extent to which the Taliban use violence as a mode of governance and authority. Few would dare to suggest the Talibs murdered Hassan, allowing them to corrupt the truth by saying they acted out of self-defense. It is also worth noting, due to Hassan being a Hazara, this may have been a large contributing factor to his execution, considering the Taliban was, or is, mostly Pashtun. His execution also proves that adults can also be innocent and suffer, not just children, in political and social protest texts. So there we have another example of a Section C answer using two texts that you might have studied. Okay, so hopefully that was useful, and good luck with your studies. Thank you.